Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. Today you're probably going to notice that my surroundings are just a little different than my usual videos. I'm sitting here in the north end of Nanaimo, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. And today we're going to be talking about what has the Chinese immigration done to the west coast of Canada. Well, you know, there's a lot of different things that have happened over the last 15-20 years here in Canada, and it's due to a big part of the immigration policy Canada has dealing with Chinese people. I'm gonna turn around in a big circle here, and maybe you could ask one of the big attractions of Vancouver Island. If you look over my shoulder, if this is what you were looking out at in the morning, every morning, this is one of the major draws to Vancouver Island. When we're talking about Chinese coming into Canada and what has that done to Canada? Well, you know, on the west coast of British Columbia, or the west coast of Canada, a lot of these houses that you see along the road here used to be 4 years ago 600,000 Canadian dollars. Now they're over $1 million. And who buys these houses? Well, Chinese buy these houses. There are some white people, Canadians, well, not just white people, there's a lot of different types of people in Canada, but I'd say a good majority of all of these houses in areas like this on Vancouver Island are owned by Chinese. They come here on entrepreneurial visas, or they come here on investor visas, which means they have a lot of money. And they buy the houses up knowing that they'll appreciate faster than an investment back in China. These houses here go up the last 2 years 8% last year and 10% this year. So if it's $1 million house and it goes up 10%, you've just made 100,000 Canadian dollars, or equivalent to about 500,000 RMB. Yes, a good investment. But there's a number of Chinese that come here as economic immigrants, where they come as skilled workers. They get jobs, engineers, cooks, welders, whatever it is. And they buy houses like this too. How do they buy houses like this? Well, I know a number of Chinese people that are in that sort of group. And what they do is they buy a house with 6-7 bedrooms. They live in one bedroom and they rent out the other 5 or 6 bedrooms to tourists, people coming to the island for vacations in the summertime or vacations in the wintertime. In Vancouver, I know places that are, you know, $2.5 million houses, and they have like 20-25 bedrooms. You know, they've got community bathrooms in them, and the idea is that the taxes on a $1 million house are about 1%, 10,000 Canadian dollars. The insurance on a $1 million house is about 1%, so another $10,000. Then you got your power, your water, your gas, heat type thing. All of these expenses during the year are taken up by the renters in these Chinese $1 million houses. Well, okay, so all of their expenses are paid. They've got $1 million house, so they make $100,000 on capital gains in a year. Yeah, I think they're doing pretty good. That's a fundamental difference between how a Canadian thinks and how a Chinese person thinks. A Chinese person is looking that, well, you know, I can buy a little house and pay my mortgage off and make a little bit off of it, or I could buy a big yanking house, well, and make more off of it. Well, the Chinese are more apt to buy the big yanking house, where a Canadian would be looking at, oh, you know, I can buy this house and it's going to cost me $2,000 or $3,000 on a mortgage every year, and you know, my interest and my taxes aren't going to be that big. But then again, you get a smaller house, or you get a condo, you get a you know, not as much. Well, you see, the Canadians are looking at how much it's going to cost them every month to live. where the Chinese are looking at how much am I going to make off this puppy when I decide to sell it, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And the Chinese aren't looking at their monthly fees. They're looking at how much capital gains, how much is this property going to be worth in 10 years? Where's my investment better spent? See, they're better at business than we are, and they look at all of the different aspects of buying a property. Everything in a Chinese person's life is about business. I know I married one, and it's all about, okay, well, that's a good idea to buy a small house because you don't have as much expense, but where are we going to be in 10 years? Exactly. So the Chinese have come in to Canada, the west coast of Canada, and they've brought lots of money with them, and they've bought up a lot of the higher end properties all along the lower mainland on in British Columbia and on Vancouver Island, Victoria, Nanaimo, places like this, where the weather is livable all year round. Not the 20-40 below in the middle of the country, but it gets down to 2 below, 4 below maybe at the most here in Nanaimo. So you're looking at the Chinese coming in. They're raising the property values in a place like this. Okay, it's good for the government because they're getting more tax dollars, but it's not good for the Canadians that now are outpriced on houses like this that used to be $600,000 4 years ago and are $1 million now. So is it a good thing? I guess for the Chinese it's a good thing, but for the Canadians that have been outpriced, well, it's not a good thing. One of the main draws, I'm going to turn the camera on, look at this. You see, if that's what you see every morning, every day, yeah, it makes it worth owning $1 million house here on Vancouver Island. So where is this going in the future of, I guess, the west coast of Canada? I can't see it getting any better as far as the Canadians are concerned, and there's going to be more and more Chinese coming to this area of Canada. Why? Because it's clean, it's beautiful, it's still within reason for a Chinese person in their understanding of buying properties. You see, you can go buy a 5 million RMB place in a place like Nanning City, and it won't have a yard, it won't have 6-7 bedrooms, it won't be 3,000 square feet on 2 different levels, so 6,000 square foot house. You won't have a backyard with a garden, you won't have a lot of the stuff that you have here. So your bang for your buck is better here in Canada than it is in China. Plus, as you notice, looking down the street, it's clean, the air is fresh, there is no bars on the windows. Why? Because there's just there's no thieves. There are thieves, but very few and far between. You just don't see them, But then again, there's no people here either. I've seen 2 people on the street this morning as I've been doing this video. In China, I would see 500 people on the street in the same time period. So that makes a big difference too, that there's not overpopulated, it's clean, the air is fresh, the water's clean, more bang for your buck, the property values go up like crazy. My wife and I have stayed in a number of these big houses that are rented out by Chinese people, or we stay in a bedroom. But you can use a kitchen, you can cook, you can go get groceries. You're there for a day, a week, a month. They rent it by the day, the week, the month. And rather than paying $100 for a hotel room, you pay $50 to $70 for a bedroom in one of these houses. No taxes. Yes, no taxes. So it's all done under the table type thing. And you're sort of living in a $1 million house, and you're paying $50 to $70 a night for your room. Plus, you get all the amenities of the kitchen, the bathroom, everything in the house. So it's better than a hotel. It's more homey. And the Chinese, they sort of live in a group all the time anyway. So people don't mind sort of congregating together in these large houses. I'm usually the only Gweilo in the house, mind you, but I don't know. Even here, I'm a little bit of an anomaly, just for the fact that, you know, in these $1 million houses that are rented out by Chinese people to other Chinese people, there's not a lot of white people that that know about it or stay at these places. My wife and I have been scoping out Nanaimo as a place to retire to for about 5 years now, and then a couple of years ago we actually bought a place. You know, up to last year, you could be a foreigner and buy a place in the lower mainland of BC, and there was no extra taxes. This last year they implemented a foreign buyer's tax. So the Chinese that are coming into the lower mainland, Vancouver especially, have to pay an extra 15%. So you buy a $2 million house, well, another 15% on top of that, you got another $300,000 to spend. So, you know, they're trying to curb the foreign buyers in British Columbia on the West Coast. Why is that? It's to make it so it's affordable for the normal Canadian to buy houses. I don't think it's going to work because the purchase of properties in Vancouver hasn't really dropped that much. You know, the Chinese just say, well, okay, it costs us a little bit more. We'll get our money back in capital gains in 5 years or 3 years or whatever. We'll just have to work a little bit harder. But, you know, the Canadian government has put in those roadblocks to Chinese buying houses, or foreigners, but it's mainly, you know, Vancouver, Vancouver. It's mainly Chinese that they're trying to dissuade from buying the higher end properties or any of the properties, because that 15% doesn't matter if you buy a trailer or a $10 million house. So yeah. So anyway, we ended up buying a place 2 years ago, and the property values were still not so bad. Now, in the last 2 years, the property that we purchased here on Vancouver Island has just about doubled in price. Not quite, about 80% in price in 2 years. So I guess it was a good business decision for ourselves to buy a place, or to get in before the market took off as crazy as it has. But yeah, so you're looking at all of these houses. Like, look around you. Like, this is how'd you like to live in a place like this? Coming from a place like China, where the air is dirty, the water is dirty, the streets are dirty, you're mostly living in an apartment, not a house. You don't have a backyard, a front yard. You don't have a garage. There's a lot of things, and you come to a place like British Columbia, Canada, and you get it all. And that's another video from Gweilo 60. If you like this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button. Thanks for watching. Bye now.